Today we launched 2 new pedals. Yeah, just a quick video really to say that today we launched 2 new pedals, 2 new members of the family, which are the updated Cafetiere and the updated version of the Terra Firma. For those of you that have followed our stuff for a while, you'll know that both of these pedals were in our lineup and have been for a little while. The Cafetiere really since the very beginning of Xander, and then a kind of later edition was the Terra Firma. For those that are unfamiliar, the Cafetiere is our take on the Interfax harmonic percolator, which there's a few clones and stuff and inspired buyers that exist on the market, but what we wanted to try and do was take that circuit and push it to the next level. The harmonic percolator is a crazy kind of distortion. It's a really strange circuit that sits somewhere between a distortion and a fuzz. It's unique in that many traditional fuzz circuits don't use clipping diodes, but this circuit does. Definitely not kind of your normal kind of smooth like fuzz face or tone bender style fuzz. So you've got the normal level and gain controls that you'd expect to find on, you know, a drive pedal. And those are the only 2 parameters that are on the original harmonic percolator circuit. Was just they had like these weird slider things instead of pots, but yeah, you had volume and gain basically. It is quite a bright circuit, so we added in a tone control that's just like a simple low pass filter that lets you just tame some of the harsher edges. We added a starve control which drains the circuit of voltage, so as you turn it down it will get even more kind of splatty and compressed on the attack. And then there's also the input control, which adjusts the input cap value, which will take you from like a very thin and kind of less gainy sound through to a very heavily compressed, very bottom heavy, and with a lot more gain on the other end. Playing around with the input and the gain controls, you can really go from like crazy all out super compressed fuzz to basically a treble boost. It will clean up completely when you mess around with those 2 controls. As with a lot of the other dirt pedals in the updated range, it has the blast feature, which swaps over the volume control to a different pot and also maxes out the gain. And that means you can basically set one low and one high, effectively giving you 2 preset sounds to work with. And then as always, there's our signature 8-way clipping diode rotary in the middle. So the original harmonic percolator circuit included the diodes. I think they were germanium diodes, I think. One of the common mods that people wanted to do was cut them out basically, because with germanium diodes there can be a little bit of an issue with because they compress so early, and it doesn't take a lot to kind of push their forward voltage and clip the signal. Often you'll find that some circuits that already don't have a lot of headroom will just not reach unity gain and won't match your bypass signal. So a common mod that people did was just cut the diodes out. It sounds really great, and a lot of times people just prefer how that sounds as well. So you've got the standard 3 symmetrical options of germanium, silicon, LED. You've got the same 3 options again, but with asymmetrical clipping. You've got the MOSFET transistor clipping mode, and then you've got the diode lift where the diodes are removed. We have somewhat gotten over that hurdle of the like germanium modes and those kind of lower or more heavily compressed clipping modes coming up to unity gain, because there's also an internal trim pot that is basically like a master volume control, so you can always dial that up if you find that you're not getting, you know, if you're using one of those lower modes and finding you're not really getting enough volume out of it, you can always crank that trimmer up. Yeah, that just about covers that one. So moving on is the updated Terra Firma power amp distortion. This is definitely one that's more for those kind of heavier players, definitely aimed and voiced around the more kind of stoner rock, desert rock, doomy kind of sound. So great for, you know, if you're tuning down to like, you know, drop C sharp or something like that. That's kind of where I was really going with this kind of thing. I'm thinking like early Queens of the Stone Age, Caius, you know, that kind of thing. So it utilizes a couple of power amp chips that you'd normally find in headphone amps, like little DIY headphone guitar amp kits and stuff like that. It has a really cool and unique sound when you basically drive it into clipping. It's definitely an acquired taste because of how kind of unique and harsh it can sound, which is also why we've added a bunch of additional clipping modes as well as a load of EQ control, so you can kind of tame it and dial it in and tweak it to your setup. So again, you've got level and gain as you would expect. Tone is again like an overall low pass filter, so it will just take off some of those kind of harsher highs. Shift works in tandem with the tone control and basically lets you define how drastic you want that kind of cut off on the tone to be. So depending on where you've got the shift set, the tone control will act either very subtly or it will dial out quite a lot of treble. And it just allows you again to kind of fine tune exactly how much you want to take out, because with just a simple low pass filter, you're also gradually rolling off kind of upper mids and basically you're just rolling off the frequencies down the spectrum. And this just allows you to kind of tweak it a little bit further and maybe not take out so much of the upper mids that you might want to keep in. And then you've also got the body control, which basically controls how much low end content is in the distortion. So with it turned all the way down, you're basically getting the full force of all that low end coming through. And the more you turn it up, the more it's going to drain away some of those lower frequencies. And also when you get right to the kind of the higher end of it, push the higher frequencies into this weird kind of compression where you almost get this kind of octave sound, which is really cool, and it feels like the distortion is kind of collapsing in on itself, which is great for when you want kind of a weird lead sound that's a little bit more nasally, that has a lot of those kind of treble and upper mid frequencies that will cut through, you know, a kind of muddy bass heavy mix. And then, like I said, the original circuit doesn't really require clipping diodes, but the distortion from the power amp alone can be a bit harsh, especially on the kind of some of the higher frequencies. So you've got our standard 8-way clipping diode rotary, as you know a lot of the other pedals do. What I like to describe this as is kind of more of like an 8-way kind of sag control, if you think of it of like how an amp would work. Instead of thinking it as like really obvious different clipping modes like you'd find in something like the surplus, for example, where it makes a really drastic difference. The clipping section in this circuit works alongside the volume control. So the higher up you have the level control, the more of a difference you'll find between those 8 modes. And what it's great for is just compressing and smoothing out that harsher top edge of the distortion, especially if you're running it into a clean amp. Obviously, if you're running it into an amp that's already breaking up, the amp is probably going to do that work for you, so you can just stick it on the diode lift setting and run it like that. But yeah, if you're running into clean, I'd recommend using one of the clipping modes just to take that edge off. Again, similar to the Cafetiere, if you're finding that on certain settings you aren't getting enough volume, there's also an internal master volume trimmer. But with this circuit, there is an awful lot of volume on tap, so turning that up is, I mean, do it at your own risk. And also note that obviously the higher you turn that master volume up, the less high you're probably going to be turning the external volume control up, and you know, the less difference you're probably going to see between those 8 modes. So it's a balancing act, but definitely something you want to tweak with, which is you wouldn't be buying a Xander pedal if you didn't want to tweak with the controls, because you know that's what we do. And again, just to round it off, the blast features there, so you can set one for like a low gain rhythm tone and then, you know, kick something in that's a lot louder and, you know, with the gain maxed out for a big kind of heavy chorus or something like that. And yeah, that just about sums up the 2 new releases that are joining the family, the updated Cafetiere and Terra Firma. We've just uploaded the full demos to our YouTube channel, independent ones for each pedal. They were really fun to edit, those ones with kind of the weird kind of stock footage intros that you'll see, really kind of interesting. They took a while to do, and I think you'll like them, especially the Terra Firma one. That took a while to do, but I'm happy with how it came out, and I'm really happy with the kind of intro songs. I think they capture the sounds of the pedals really well. Thank you for watching. I'll put all the relevant links in the description below so you can have a look on the website and read more about the 2 new pedals. As always, if you want to know what we're up to, like on more of the day-to-day, then head over to our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we'll see you next time.